This champion was one of the worst cards in the game at the start of 2022. A 3-mana 3/2 that recalls on strike, removing all previously acquired tempo. A champion with no real followers to provide her with a playable deck, and a complete mismatch with her theme and gameplay in League of Legends. So even the most dedicated mains wouldn't want to pick her up in card form. And that was it. That was Katarina for almost 2 entire years. An unplayable, thematic mismatch with no deck to call home. League's poster girl, well, before Jinx, had to endure being in the region that was consistently at the top while somehow getting excluded from every deck she should be good in. But over the course of 2022, something changed. And at the end of the year, this happened.
Noxian Fervor comes through, there's no response from Teddy, and Teddy is going to have that last gem he wanted. The world champion is Aragorn!
World champion Aragorn didn't play Katarina by accident. Slowly but surely, Katarina became a real card. This video is about the sinister blade of Noxus and her gradual rise to power, and how she would slowly transition from a weak synergy bot into the goddess of tempo. Let's start with the first patch where Katarina ever made an appearance at all, patch 3.6. This was Katarina's level 1 and level 2 up until that point. After this balance update on April 24 in 2022, her level 2 was changed to retain her level 1 functionality by creating a Blade's Edge on summon, and it cost 0 mana instead of 1. This was obviously a pretty big buff, but ultimately changed nothing for Katarina's playability. At the time, she still suffered the same issues as before, and having a free Blade's Edge wasn't going to change that. One of the decks Katarina wanted to be played in was with Yasuo, where you use Cat as a recall to progress the Yasuo level up, and as a way to get additional attacks on a stunned board because, well, Yasuo decks are known to run a stun card or two. And it doesn't matter if you're part of the 75% of viewers that aren't subscribed to my channel because you love playing Ionia, or if you're a Yasuo main with an average KDA of 0.2 on League of Legends and you don't know what Daylight is. If you don't think this is satisfying, you might be Yone. The other deck Katarina saw some play in was with Ashe, because you'd be attacking multiple times on a board that was frozen instead of stunned. However, LeBlanc did everything Katarina did, but better. Synergy with the 5 attack aspect of the deck, protection tools from failure so you can keep her around, and a level up that wins the game when you combine it with the other rally card from Noxus. Katarina desperately needed a reason to be played in decks, but no matter how hard the player base tried, she was always outclassed. But there was a glimmer of hope on May 25th with the release of the Worldwalker expansion, but not in the way you might expect. The way I looked at Katarina, and I'm sure many of you did too, was as a rally card. Her only use was a combo piece to get multiple attacks off in a Noxus-focused deck. But rallies are not what finally made her playable. Not really. The reason Katarina found a home for the very first time was because Blade's Edge became a real card. There's more at play here than just cards that synergize with pinging for 1 damage, but let's go over them first. The obvious one, Annie's package loves Blade's Edge. Just by playing a fast spell, you progress Annie's level up and the Ravenbloom Conservatory. These cards gave a real payoff to just destroying everything your opponent played. Speaking of which, am I the only one who is frustrated by the playstyle of these Noxus decks? Every single day, I wake up and I open my favorite game. Once I get sick of Mario Kart, I load up Legends of Runeterra, and immediately I am harassed and cyber-bullied by Red Ionia. As soon as I see Lucius Malfoy in the loading screen, I know the lifespan of every unit in my deck is reduced by 90%. Blade's Edge and Annie's champion spell lowered life expectancy to about 98%. Disintegrate is an incredible card to be paired up with Blade's Edge, to the point where Blade's Edge became a card that was worth main decking, and Katarina really benefited from this indirect buff too. However, Blade's Edge becoming playable indicates a much bigger change to the way Runeterra is played. This change became most notable with Bandle City making it much cheaper to increase the number of cards you have access to. Mostly generated cards, but card advantage in general became easier and cheaper to obtain. Cards like Portalpalooza would have been game-breaking in Foundations, but right now it's just an okay card, if not strong with Nora. Salvage was played in decks outside of Deep because of how limited access to cards was, but now we get to play cards like Eye of Nagake Boros and Drum Solo. Cards are cheap, so there's a shift in what decks value, which means there must have been more going on. July 20th, the Forces from Beyond expansion released. 3 new champions were added to the game, and one of them was this vile beast. But luckily, that's not actually relevant to this issue. The other champion release would change Runeterra forever. Not that one. Legends of Runeterra has been assaulted, raided, and devoured by Blue Katarina. Gwen didn't have a massive impact on Legends of Runeterra once he was first released, but once people figured her out, it was all Gwen all the time. Quick attack makes it virtually impossible to block a unit buffed with the hallowed stacks because almost no unit would have enough health to withstand such a blow, especially during the early stages of a match. And this is how Red Gwen, yeah I know, it's not actually called Blue Katarina, I'm bummed about it too, became one of the strongest and most consistent decks of 2022. A card released during World Walker that went under everyone's radar until Katarina showed her full potential was Windswept Hillock. This 5-mana landmark turned out to be the card Yasuo was dreaming of for all these years. And not only that, it also ended up indirectly affecting Katarina. Windswept Hillock took a broken concept and glued it together. A consistent and powerful stun for Yasuo? Check. Katarina attack token synergy? Check. Yasuo tutor? Double check. In fact, this card was so good at what it did, player Floppy Mudkip decided to take his Yasuo Katarina deck to a seasonal tournament in October and took home the victory.
And Floppy Mudkip is your seasonal champion, Yasuo Katarina Prophecy.
Competitive players soon realized that a decision had to be made in terms of their tournament lineups. Were they going to play Katarina with Yasuo or with Gwen? But what cards made Red Gwen consistently great? Hallowed is a stupidly powerful keyword, and Gwen loves rallies because of it. But why the pairing with Noxus and not the rally region Demacia? Or even Vayne with her infamous tumbles? Well, it's because almost no deck can actually interact with Katarina being played on curve, making it incredibly easy to level her up. Combined with Hallowed, you constantly have to block units that will never strike back because of quick attack. And of course, there's Ravenous Flock. This deck has access to Vile Feast and a virtually infinite amount of Blade's Edges from Katarina, which is actually a really clever way to fix her thematics and make her feel more like the never-ending dagger-throwing machines he plays like in League of Legends. The free card you get when you summon Katarina found an increasing amount of synergy points within Noxus. Opulent Foyer is a card I would have never expected to come close to playability, but the interaction with Katarina is absurd. On defense, you get a blocker, and when you get the attack token, you get an attack that increases your Hallowed count. Blocks become completely useless because you're defending yourself from ephemeral attacks and quick attacking units with a billion attack that will eventually run you out of units. You're left with this engine that keeps making attackers every time you gain the attack token, combined with cheap removal in the form of Flock, Edge, and Quietus. It's the interaction between Hallowed attacks and the new when you gain the attack token mechanic that realized Katarina's true potential. This deck is all about tempo, but it's hard to really know what that is or how to put it into numbers. Tempo is just measuring how far ahead you are. If you play a card to get ahead, you're playing for tempo. It's the momentum of a match and the timing advantage of being in the lead. For example, in Mario Kart, you want to make it to the finish line without getting hit with too many items. The players behind you have the same end goal, but their objective right now is to destroy your winning lead. You're trying to get first place, and they're trying to stop you from getting first. And if they are in the lead, they're trying to win, and you're trying to stop them. Being first place is tempo, and having tempo means you can be the first to initiate your winning strategy without having to worry about stopping the players behind you. And over the course of 2022, Runeterra moved from a card advantage economy to a tempo economy, and Katarina stocks exploded. The most important resource is no longer cards. Having activity and being able to create an advantage with the cards that are in your hand is more important than just having a lot of cards in your hand. Players are actually dying with plenty and good cards still in hand. A lot of card games go through this kind of transition, seeing more of the cards you put in your deck and fewer scenarios where you're stuck with cards in your hand that you can't use. This is of course a good thing because it makes games faster and more satisfying for the player, but it makes fixing the power creep that happened over the years pretty difficult. There's an unbelievable amount of resources right now, and restricting or limiting these resources isn't going to feel good. Blade's Edge is a prime example. The main use was always to be very efficient in terms of tempo, but very inefficient in terms of card advantage. And the card is very playable right now. On the other hand, rallies have always been about turning a big tempo advantage into a win before your opponent can equalize. Katarina is a card that allows you to rally an infinite amount of times, and with the Demacia rallies getting nerfed in patch 3.19 on November 8th, Katarina's value skyrocketed. Nothing really changed. Rallies have worked like that since the game was released. If you got ahead on board, you slammed a relentless pursuit and won the game before your opponent could catch up. Playing Katarina and attacking with her is still negative tempo, but playing Foyer on defense covers up the tempo loss
boss.
and allows you to convert your sky-high hallowed count into a convincing victory. Red Gwen is the epitome of this shift in value in Legends of Runeterra. The curious case of Katarina started all the way back in January of 2022 when I uploaded this video. A few months later in April, Katarina got access to a 0-mana Blade's Edge when she levels. May released Windswept Hillock and Annie synergistic cards to bring Katarina's first real decks to life. 2 months later in July, Kat's true potential was unleashed on Runeterra in a deck with Gwen. Later that year, with the balance update in November, rallies were nerfed, indirectly increasing Katarina's value again. And finally, the 2022 Runeterra World Championship in December. All of these changes came together. 6 players in the top 16 brought Katarina Gwen to the tournament, which is even more impressive when you realize how overtuned Aatrox and Champion Strength were at the time. A card that went from unplayable to a champion people are begging to get nerfed. And the only direct change was the Blade's Edge buff that seemed meaningless because we had no idea what was waiting for us. Katarina's rise to glory is a beautiful story of how a card game can change and how those changes can indirectly affect the champions and archetypes you'd least expect to become powerful. Well, here we are, a full year later since I uploaded my first big video that talked about how bad Katarina was. It's been a wild journey and I can't wait to show you what I have planned for 2023. And before the video ends, a huge shout out to Drizzoth for his invaluable insight on the Katarina case, so make sure to check out his article. And also to Yang Zera, Yellow Maggie, and Venny for helping with the script. Let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.